Welcome. My name is Paul. I'm joined with John Anderson today. Today we're going to be talking about the Rancocas Creek. We're going to talk pretty in depth about the Rancocas Creek. We're going to touch upon the Neshaminy Creek, and we're going to touch upon the Pennsauken Creek. I'm doing this webinar in partnership with John Anderson, Happy Captain's Boating Instruction, and Sea Scout Ship 117. These three are just jumping in different places along the webinar to provide their invaluable information. Just some quick housekeeping. Please, let's try to keep the profanity to a minimum. Let's try to treat everybody with respect and keep the politics to a zero. Please turn your camera off unless unless you really want us to see your laundry or something weird behind you, or if you're presenting, feel free to put your camera on. If you have a question, try to push the button to raise your hand. There's an arrow there, push the three dots, and then push the raise the hand button.
All right, so that's my background is I do a lot of kayaking on the Rancocas Creek year round. I also work at McAllister Tugboat Company, so I have a perspective of not only of the Delaware River, but also of the Rancocas Creek, which is, I watch the changes happening on a daily basis. I prefer having a kayak than a motorboat. However, I did just pick up recently just purchased a duck boat. So big deal. That's the biggest boat I'm going to be happy with. I'm really not too concerned about going out with anything else. But I have noticed over this winter with the ice that took place, there's a lot of scouring has taken place on the Rancocas Creek from the navigable section where the Delaware River joins the Rancocas Creek at 9 mile 96 south on the federal navigation channel, which is almost directly opposite from the Linden Street ramp, and Delanco and Riverside. And that shoal, as you enter the creek, because of the ice that has
You're gonna bring that
I
up
don't have
for
that.
you,
Yeah,
so
I
I
don't.
can show that.
So part of my background is for about, I don't know, 5-6 years, I was director of a hovercraft operation on the Delaware River. So I was attending the ice conferences on the Delaware River that they have every year down in Maryland. And so I've been tracking the ice patterns on the Delaware River for quite some time. And so you can see Rancocas Creek here. You can see where the green shallow comes out. And that shallow, based on being out there looking around it, that shallow has extended further out in toward the Delaware River channel itself. The guys on the tugboat tell me the mouth of the Rancocas Creek when they go by is getting to be a little bit squirrely at times, especially when the tide is running. So yeah, you can see how Paul just wrote in there, but that shoal has extended that far out. If you go up the Rancocas Creek and we go to the east up to Rancocas Creek, the further east you go for the navigable sections of it, the ice has really scoured out. All those shallows have changed completely. And what you're having at this point is the first bridge that you get to here is the railroad bridge for, I don't know what it is, Main Street, whatever the hell is River Road, the first bridge there. That really, those currents are now running there extra fast based on what's happening up the creek. And if you can look for the second bridge on the right there, you can see there's like a Venturi effect occurs right at that bridge. And so the currents there, especially with the ice that's scouring out the channel and everything, that's extremely fast currents now. And the bridge is there. There's a note on the bridge. I don't know enough about it, but there's a note on the bridge that's posted, a placard you can call to get the bridge open if it's closed. I think you can only get through there at low tide. I think at high tide it'd be damn near impossible if you have a high cabin on your boat. If you go further east on the creek, on the Rancocas Creek, and we watched this happen literally in front of us. It was such a fast progression of the ice scouring out where Mill Creek comes into, just keep going further to the east. Yeah, keep going, come up around Bridgeboro. There you go, past the park here. There you go. Just, yeah, keep going up a little up to the right. Okay, you see that big giant bend in the creek? All right, perfect. So you can see Mill Creek. This would have been last summer. Okay, and you notice there's a bend in Mill Creek that comes out into those shallow area. That shallow area was dredged in 1898 was the last time it was dredged. And up to this point, there's not been any problems. Getting in there at low tide, you might scrape the bottom of a boat, of a motorboat or something. But the majority of you could get through. You could get through the kayak, you get through the motorboat. It wasn't a problem. Duck boats, guys like that who were hunting, wasn't a problem.
I'm gonna try to annotate this here. So if I remember correctly, the sandbar was somewhere about here.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened this winter? It's Coates. It's known on the old charts as Coates Bar, and it's a sandbar, obviously. Um, the As you go up Mill Creek, which is that creek right as you're looking straight ahead, that first bend that actually bends towards the creek, there's a little channel that goes out to the creek. To the right of it, there's another looking like another channel. So yeah, so right there, that's one channel that goes out to the creek. And then to the right of that, there's another channel. There's another scour in the marsh, low tide. It's dredge spoils that comes in there. What happened was this winter, it took the ice in the middle of the ice season, and I had a friend went down there in a duck boat and got some pictures of the ice when they were out there duck hunting at that time of the year. The ice on the lower end of the Rancocas Creek is all sucked in from the Delaware River. So you've got.
I think I'm sharing it.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah. So what happens is you have ice flows in the creek there that are the size of basically a motorboat, a small motorboat, like a John boat with an engine on it or a Boston Whale or something like that. That's how big those ice flows were. So what happened is in February, mid-February, that channel that you see where the double hours are, that channel was not open. By the end of February, 2 weeks later, that channel is open. That is now a major channel into the Rancocas Creek. So what you have now are the shoals in that area are a lot more shallow. They're really shallow even at high tide because it's changed the complete topography of the creek. And that becomes into a dangerous thing because everybody's used to coming up to where it says Coates Bar, it's shallow, you can kind of hang out there. You can't do that now. Those shoals, the shoal for Coates Bar Creek now extends close to 3/4 away across the creek. So when you get up in there, that channel is narrow. And if that doesn't add to your fun and games, especially against the tide and the current, which could be estimated up to about 4 miles an hour, the ice, as you go another 12 miles up to the east into Mount Holly, the whole creek froze up. All that section between Mount Holly and the confluence was full of snags and everything. The ice cleared all that out. So now you have all up and down the main stem of the Rancocas Creek, you have substantive spars that are stuck on sandbars that are sticking up into recreational traffic for motorboats.
Because the ice brought it down.
Yeah, the ice caused a lot of havoc on the creek this year, and it just scoured out the creek banks. It got over the banks, And when ice is moving, you're not going to stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I would make the safe assumption, which I don't like to do, but I would make the safe assumption that whatever happened on the Rancocas Creek with ice is the same thing that happened on the Neshaminy Creek, the same thing that happened on, Ridley Creek, which it's the same thing that happened for every Tidewater Creek that came in. It's the same thing has happened. So
it's funny that you say that because I've been down at the marina and I've been kind of just watching out on the water and low tide. There's a whole bunch of different stuff going on out there now than there used to be.
Right. And at low tide, you can see the differences that occur once it happens with low tide. And it's like, wow, hold on. There's all sorts of craziness that's taking place.
Yep.
And what I would think is going to happen this winter, this summer, is people are not going to be attuned to that. And when that happens, you're going to have more problems.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, that up here where we're talking is not an area where CETO goes. This isn't an area where Boat US travels frequently. This is definitely an area where the Coast Guard does not go.
Yeah.
All honesty. So people up here, I mean, they very frequent. This right here is, for reference, this is Carlucci's restaurant right here. So more often than not, I frequently see people pulling tubes all along here. That's not what I wanted to click on. Click on the annotation. All right, so people are pulling tubes here, or they're pulling tubes back here. right? But in order to get back here, they're going to have to get through that section,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that
at Coach
gauntlet over
Park.
here,
Right.
which has just completely changed over the winter.
Yeah, and that area around Coach Bar and up at Carlucci's, which would be Borton Landon area, those
Yeah.
shoals, those shoals specifically have changed directly the safe navigation of the creek. And it's pretty obvious when you get out there to see it. You know what I mean? Just look at the water as you're coming up or into it, and you can see the chop in the direction of the current. You know, it's not
Yeah.
as bad as say like the spider web up in New York Harbor where you've got 20 different variables going in there. But the main flow of the creek, which for the last couple of years is just basically back and forth, has now changed because of the shallowness of the water and with the shoals that are in there. Like I said, I would think the same thing is happening on the Neshaminy Creek and every other tidewater creek that goes into the river, because the ice this year it's a good ice year. We
Yeah,
haven't
it
had a good
was.
ice year. We haven't had a good ice year like this in probably 10 years.
No,
And
I don't remember the last. I mean, it's been a long time since we've had actual, almost walkable ice down to this area on the Delaware River. I mean,
yeah, right.
you could probably walk across the Delaware River back in January.
Yeah.
Up here.
Which is nuts if you think about it. Like, wow, it's that much
Yeah.
ice and everything. So, and the ice
Yeah.
conferences they had it in November. They weren't expecting to have that happen. And then the tug guys were breaking ice to go all the way up to Fairless, and when they were breaking ice going all the way up to Fairless, then there's no ifs, ands, or buts that the ice topography of the creek has changed the current, the shoals, and basically people should get a heads up and kind of study the areas. Just running out nowadays and throwing in full throttle on some of these tidewater creeks that are big enough to carry boats will be problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. This is
They
good
had
information.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had
huge.
they had a log removal thing on the creek, on the Rancocas Creek. That got swallowed by the ice. The locals had put one together and they were, quietly removing stuff and nobody
Yeah.
was saying anything. That thing got swallowed up by the ice and it just got folded up into the ice and torn apart. And then so if you don't understand the power of tidal ice, this winter was a very good reason to say, wow, this is pretty extreme stuff that takes place here. And I know the mouth of the Neshaminy Creek was close to the river, so I would assume that the mouth of the Neshaminy Creek is going to have some changes to it also. The Assaconk definitely is going to have changes to it up by Curtin's Marina. And I think the back channel of at Petty's Island and
Yeah.
yeah,
Behind Burlington Island's going to change
Burlington
a
Island,
little
yeah,
bit.
all those that is completely changed. To what extent, I don't even know. I mean, I'm looking at the chart you're showing right now. The north branch of the Rancocas Creek that's pretty accurate. The south branch, we're showing all those shoals that are in there, and going up to the public launch in Hainesport. That is pretty accurate. That you cannot get a boat through there. Now they're opening up a new marina on the south branch.
Oh, that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah, Bob Shin's old place is now being sold.
Oh, wow.
The problem with Bob Shin's marina being sold is at low tide, which is on the yellow line on your chart here in front of me. That's Highway
I believe
38.
this is Bob Shin's Marina right here.
Yeah, correct. Yep. Yeah.
Right
So at
there.
low tide, you can't go underneath the Martin Highway Bridge. You can see that how it shoals out there, right? That
Yeah.
whole section, that bend, that whole configuration of those waters in that area has completely changed, and it's a lot more shallower because the ice, as you can see, if the ice would come down, it would just get stuck in that area and just form this big giant whirlpool of ice, and it's just scoured everything away. Now it's a big giant shallow. Back in the day, so it's great that he's opening up his marina, but you can't get out at mid to low tide. And that was last year. I would expect this year it's even going to be worse because that shoal is definitely going to fill up there. And that basically on the south branch.
Do you have a name for that marina by chance?
It's just Bob Shin's old marina. They haven't named it yet.
Okay.
But that is indicative of how it is. And if you go up the south branch all the way up to the Lumberton ramp at low tide, you cannot even get a kayak through the south branch. If you go up the south branch all the way up to the Lumberton Marina, you can't even go that high in a kayak because it's so shallow this year. And it wasn't like that last year. You know, so you guys who were taking motorboats up at the Lumberton ramp, which is not the suggested use for that ramp because it's not designed for that, you're not going to be able to get through there at low tide now. With a jet ski, with a motorboat, at a kayak, you know, where you're basically walking across it at low tide, and you're talking 2 hours plus or minus low tide that you can't get through there. And so, you know, the ice has changed. The ice has changed. Definitely the you know, the navigational ability on the Rancocas Creek has changed, and there's no doubt that on the other tidewater creeks of the Delaware River, that those changes have also happened. But I mean, that's what's happening is, you know, so I mean, you have these, you know, you have these lovely tidewater creeks that when the navigational channels are open and people figure out exactly what's going on, they're not bad going up at a slow rate of speed. This year, you know, there's some huge snags that are present in the creek that are just waiting to snag a boat as they go by. And
Yeah.
you know, we track those channels to keep them open to see what's open and what's closed. I know for a fact, for what we're seeing at this time of year already, is there's a lot of changes in the creek and the bottom and the shoals that are on the creek, and that translates out to the Delaware River. And you know, I didn't bring any of the up to date navigation stuff that we use on a daily basis on the Delaware River, but I do know that some of the shoals they're flagging those shoals now to get them priority to dredge them out, so to keep the channel open. So,
Well, hey, bring that to some of the other webinars. Let me know. Or just send me some information off
yeah,
tags.
yeah, no problem. Yeah.
That'd be good to have. That'd be good to
So,
have.
so yeah,
Any changes on the north branch that you know of?
yeah. So the north branch is where, if you keep going to the right, where your that red thing is. I'm not sure what
Yeah.
that red thing.
That's
Right, so
a tidal gauge.
Okay, so the tide gauge at Timbuktu, right? And if you go up to the right, you can see where the creek makes a bend, and there's the old turning basin. That entire section of the creek was filled with snags. All right, just jam packed full of snags, and you couldn't get a motorboat in there. You couldn't really do anything. You could barely kayak through. The snags were so bad. That entire section is now there are no snags in there. And those choke points are open. And all those snags have been flushed down river to the main stem.
Interesting. For anybody that's listening to this for a future recording, a snag is a tree or a dead log that is leaning over and obstructing your path on the water.
Yeah. So what they are now is that they're, because the tide's taking them, you know, they're snags that are just sticking, you know, a little bit out of the water, but they're buried in mud 4 to 6 feet. So when you hit them, they're not moving. So that section has opened up completely. We were out there last week. Actually, yeah, last Friday we were out there at low tide. The snags are gone.
Wow.
And I would expect,
that's amazing.
Yeah, I would expect what's going to happen is the creek is walking, which means that because it's marl banks on the creek banks fold in on themselves. And as they fold in on themselves, all the trees that line it fall into the creek. And that's what's happening now. That's an active, you know, bona fide process that's taking place. The next flood, high water that we come in, the creek's going to walk a little more. It's going to encroach, and you're just going to roll over, and those, you know, you'll have those areas will be back in there. But all those snags, and you can see on that picture you've got right in front of you, you can see that green area that's right in the center of the creek. That area is gone. That blockage is not there anymore, except that's an active section of the creek where it's walking. Yeah, right there. You can see it's all blocked off with blowdowns and everything. You're right. That section has been cleared, but the creek banks are folding in on themselves. And as they're folding in on themselves, all the trees that line it are falling back on itself. If you can get around this area, you can get up into Mount Holly in a 20-foot motorboat without a problem. We have people with pontoon boats who have pontoon boats in Mount Holly who can't come out because that channel is blocked. And if they don't, so I mean, that channel is a navigable channel. I mean, that's a navigable channel into Mount Holly, and so, you know, it's open. How long it's going to be open for, I don't know. I'm sure it'll close off. Like I said, it's walking. And as it's walking, the creek is being blocked. So, you know, and the currents are moving faster and they're shifting differently. So the outside bends that, you know, you're expecting to have shallows are now shoaling up, and the inside corners are also shoaling up. And, you know, it's changed dramatically. And if you keep going further up the creek, all the way up into Mount Holly, and you go underneath the 4-lane bridge there, right? So you get up to the waste management facility here. That area itself also, there used to be a bunch of snags in there, and the township or the MUA got in there and cleaned a bunch of them out. But about a week after they cleaned that entire area out, the creek walked a little bit, and all those trees, a bunch of new trees fell back into the creek, and the creek's blocked. So it's an active environment for hazards. And like I said, if it's happening here, it's happening in other creeks. I mean, the Rancocas is not that unique as a tidewater creek in this area, but yeah, I would say that it's definitely happening in other creeks. And people should basically study, before you go rushing out and, full throttle to the thing, people should kind of sit back and at least I would really suggest do a cursory run where you're going before you worry about anything else,
Yeah,
I
take
do
your
know,
time.
That's
right,
good advice.
right, at least the first time, the first couple weeks of the season are going to be telling because people aren't expecting the creek to change these tidewater creeks that they used to blast up to have problems, and there's problems. I mean, it's not, to me, it's not problematic. It's just there's shoals, and
Jesus.
you're not gonna, by the time you look at it and say, oh Jesus, it's on my radar screen, I can go to X, Y, and Z at X speeds, and that's, oops, wait a minute, which shoal wasn't here last year, right? Because you can program your routes into GPS onto a navigation chart, right? So it's a rote thing, but it's changed, and that's not reflected in what you're talking about. So
Yeah. As an example, I mean, we can go here, automatic.
right.
We can go from here, and you can say to go here. And it will plot that path.
Oh, look at that.
But,
how about that? No shit.
But you still have to be certain that that path is going to be safe. Now, it will flag that there could be shoaling or there could be hazards, but a boater's eye is still a boater's eye.
Yeah, you're going to need that. And, at least you figure out what the hell's going on around you. The guys, it was funny, this already so far this year, some of the guys up on the North Branch came barreling down the North Branch to go out to the Delaware, and they hit the new shoals that are up at the confluence, and they couldn't get out of the confluence.
Wow.
And then they turned around and came back up, and they were like, oh my God, that wasn't here last year. And it's like, nope. And these guys have been on the creek for 30 years. They came out of the North Branch, and that you can see where it's the 2-foot mark, right? Well, that's that whole channel, the mouth of the North Branch, is basically blocked off now because it shoals at low tide.
Wow.
And like I said, and that wasn't there last year. Wasn't a problem last year. People were, guys were running their speedboats up and down it. Winsinger, not Winsinger, Girdleman. He was running his 350 engine little putt-putts up and down the river, at high rates of speed, and he could get out. It wasn't a problem, but they tried. I was there so far. It was one time, but the guy came back up the creek, and he was, we talked about it, and he's like, yeah, that whole mouth of that entrance to that creek, and I cannot at low tide get a kayak out of that area, out of the North Branch of the Rancocas Creek at low tide.
Wow.
I'm gonna have problems
Yeah.
with a kayak getting out of there at low tide.
I remember when I went up there with you guys, and I took the boat back there, and that was maybe 2 years ago at this point, and the sandbar was more or less like this. So that's quite surprising now that it has shifted to almost go all the way across.
Yeah, correct. Yep.
That's surprising.
Yeah, and you're not expecting it that fast. Now I looked at Army Corps of Engineers silt studies for the Delaware River, just for general maritime stuff and their dredging programs and everything. Is there's a lot of silt. There's a lot of silt comes out of these little creeks, and you start adding things like ice. You start adding things like speed and flooding and things like that. It's going to accumulate, and it does not. I was quite amazed at the speed of how fast it took the ice to cut a new channel at Mill Creek and the shoaling to take place on the North Branch, blocking the mouth of the North Branch of the Rancocas Creek. I was quite surprised to see the shoaling occur that fast. It was just kind of like, wow, that's you know what's going to happen, but not that fast. and it's just,
Yeah.
it's moving fast. And like I said, what I know of the Neshaminy Creek and the upriver creeks that are up here, and some of the, Darby Creek and down at like Aunt Deb's Ditch and places like that, south of Salem River and places like that, there's changes. There's been tremendous changes in the water, and knowing the topography and everything. So to what extent?
Yeah. We're gonna find out. We're gonna
We're
find
gonna,
out.
yeah,
that's
we're
for
gonna
sure.
find out. Yep, and it would be nice if people had a place to actually post at without people screaming and yelling about whatever else, because the people who are going to know the river are the people who have the boater's eyes, who know exactly what the hell's going on, that can report to other people. Say, hey, by the way, when I was out, I saw X, Y, and Z, and decided, yeah, not a good time to go. And so we're not going at full rates of speed, or the wake in the wash of the tugboats and the large tankers and the freighters that are going up and down the river. That wake in the wash, or that topography has changed also based on the fact that the ice has scoured out some of the creek bank, the river banks even more. And nobody's really taken that into consideration yet. So, there's going to be some, and I know there's been a couple issues with tankers going up and down the river where those forces have caused those tankers to get, close to running aground, if not actually running aground, or at least touching bottom, because those shoals weren't that deep last year.
There was just that one in not too long ago, in January, right? That ran aground, or was it December? I don't know.
Yeah, the one up by
guy
Petty's
that
Island.
friend.
Yeah.
Right.
By Petty's
That
Island.
was probably before the ice, though, right?
That was before the ice. So now it's going to change. So
Yep.
So yeah, no, I think it's good to see it happen. I'd like to see that transition, that evolution of ice and water and tides and everything taking place. I like seeing that happen. Nobody said boating was the safest thing in the world. You got to pay attention. You just can't hop on a boat and full throttle downriver and think everything's going to be okay. It will be 90% of the time. But as somebody mentioned just now, the Coast Guard doesn't really patrol too heavily on the Delaware River and the local rivers, and they probably won't until there's problems start occurring. And then, God knows what happened then, what type of change will happen. So yeah, Pennsauken Creek, the bridge across Pennsauken Creek was closed for a little bit, but I would imagine because the Pennsauken Creek is even shallower and more Venturi type looking things on it, that has silted in also.
Yeah, Pennsauken Creek is extremely shallow. Always has been, and it's also really narrow. So if we're seeing extreme changes on the Rancocas Creek, which is a behemoth of a creek, if we're going to be looking at Pennsauken Creek, we're only looking at 2, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 feet at the deepest in different spots, and a whole lots of venturies that we should expect quite a bit of changes. And I do know there's quite a few people, especially with skis, that use, where is
It's the lower Pennsauken.
Forked Landing right here.
Okay.
They use that as a drop-in spot for wave runners down here, so they're gonna have to be real careful going in and out of here. And there's also the jug handle, which is right here. It's just a bad view. It's the jug handle in here. So people come in back there and they tie up the trees and stuff and go up and get some food. We don't know if they're gonna be able to do that this year until they try it and figure out if they can.
Yeah, and it's still too early yet. We haven't had the spring floods haven't happened yet, or high water, or the spring tides haven't happened yet, the high tides.
Yes.
That hasn't happened yet. So we're ahead of the curve talking about stuff that the next month or two, there's going to be more changes in it. I mean, spring tides,
Absolutely.
and the tides are running higher. The tides are definitely running higher. If you compare the tide charts with the tides on any of the tidewater creeks in the Delaware River, they're not 100% accurate right now. And they do meet up to the guidelines of tide charts are guidance, but they don't provide 100% accurate information. Our best guess on the Rancocas Creek is the tides may be up to 2 hours off from the tide charts.
Wow.
And so when I was talking to some of the tugboat captains about this and some of the operational people about this, they have also picked up on the fact that the tides are not running according to the tide charts. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, lots of changes. A little bit of ice causes lots of changes. And,
Absolutely.
and
right now there's nothing on the Neshaminy Creek to go up the Neshaminy. There's no reason to go up the Neshaminy Creek right now.
No.
There's no marinas up here. Everything is closed. And the Creekside, the Dockside Cafe went belly up in
No.
December.
So
Yeah.
it's done.
So
Jeez.
there's I asked a whole bunch of people today on Facebook on the Delaware River page to kind of get a feel for what they're doing up there, and they indicated that somebody may have bought it for a wedding venue. There's nothing concrete yet. No indication what's going on. On the Rancocas, you always have.
well, Lightning Jacks is up for sale now, or it's not
It
even
is?
up for sale. It's not even up for sale. They're auctioning it off.
Oh,
Lightning Jacks is
man.
being auctioned off now. Obviously, the docking out Lightning Jacks is a problem because of the silting and the shoals and everything like that.
Yep.
But
Yep.
but that is now up for. There's a big sign out in front of it saying, this is now being auctioned off to the highest bidder. Man,
Darn.
so that's they can't
Is
use that.
that? Do you know if that includes the restaurant?
It includes everything. Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, you can't get a boat in there anymore. You can't get boats in there.
Yeah.
And that's.
Darn.
I mean, and I know the guy that Lightning Jackson. Everybody had these grandiose plans to get in and prop washing and everything like that. It doesn't matter. You've cut. There's an in cut along the creek bank in a heavily, silt's going to build up there. That's the nature of silt.
That's
It's
what
going
it
to build
does.
up.
It creates a vacuum. It just spins it in. That's all it does.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's being auctioned off. So that, all those boats that are, kind of uses that one, which they're not many, but that's going to be closed off now for access. So I think there's going to be some tremendous changes on the river and the creeks nowadays.
Yep.
We'll see.
Yep. So the only one left on the Rancocas is going to be
No, and
they're
they're in a pretty good deep section of the channel.
Yep.
And you talk to the guys who own the place and the guys who are there on a regular basis, they'll tell you up front is, the shoals to the entrance to this are getting to be squirrely.
One thing that these guys do not like is weight. They want your boats nice and slow going past their docks.
Yep. Well, it makes sense.
Absolutely. They want to protect their stuff. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's there's changes. There's definitely gonna be changes this year, and they're ill-defined yet. It's not quite yet boating season. But we get a nice flood, relatively a nice flood season for the springtime as the spring tides. There's gonna be more changes in it. And I'm not positive what'll happen from there. I don't think anybody is at this time, but caution word to the wise for people who are out boating is scout it, see what you're getting yourself into before you go, running into a snag that's sticking, a foot out of the water, but the other 30 feet of it's buried in mud 6 to 8 feet deep. So you're hitting in concrete. So
Yep. Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can add anything else to the discussion here. But,
I think we're good, man. I think we covered just about everything. Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. What was there any questions? Had somebody else joined? I think midway through the call. I didn't get to welcome you. I'm sorry. We were just kind of talking or rambling on. John, did you have any questions? Or
yeah, definitely.
First time joining your group here, and it's very interesting. So I hope to be more involved. Thanks for thanks for offering it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I think discussions with people who know the river and getting her out in the river on a daily basis type thing, or at least have knowledge of it. I think it's a good way to kind of inform people. Like, hey, by the way,
It's huge.
Yeah.
I said it before. Thank you very much for doing this, and the way you guys cover it is just nice and easy, just easy to listen to, and very, very insightful. So thank you very much.
Cool, man. It was a pleasure.
And that's the idea.
Yeah,
That's the idea. This was recorded, so I'm gonna go probably the next thing I do the rest of the night is try to clean this up, and I'll throw it up on YouTube so everyone can see it if they didn't see it. The next one is going to be on Monday. That's going to be the Betsy Ross to the Schuylkill River. So it'll be the entire Philadelphia waterfront.
Nice.
As much as we can cover it. Then after that, the same week on the 2nd, we're going to do the tributaries going into the river. I think that's
Nice.
kind of nice, easy way to do it.
All right.
Yeah, we'll slowly work our way down the river and then
All
up
right.
the coast.
All right, very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Have a good one.
Have a
you.
good night.
Thank you,
Take
everybody.
care.
You too. Bye.